Are these the first volleys in America's next civil war?
He's not a tough guy. He's a bully and he's a bitch.
He's a punk. He's a dog. He's a pig.
And he can suck my
He's a con, a bullshit artist, a mutt.
I'll meet him in a hotel room any other day of the week and give him a Louisville Slugger.
I'd like to punch him in the face.
Kiss my mother.
Which side of the aisle is really spewing hateful rhetoric?
Pointing what appears to be a water gun at the image of President Donald Trump projected on a whiteboard, art teacher Pale Modi has now been seen by countless viewers.
Yes, I have thought an awful lot about blowing up the White House.
Weekdays from noon to 3 p.m. Eastern Time, The J.J. McCartney Show, exposing the truth, exposing the lies, exposing the deep state.
It's an actor dressed to look just like President Donald Trump as he's assassinated on stage.
How much longer can America survive this kind of hatred?
Video depicting comedian Kathy Griffin holding the bloody, decapitated head of President Trump are no joking matter for the Secret Service.
The rhetoric that has inspired the violence has come from the mainstream of the Democratic Party.
They're involved in the coup, an active attempt to start a bloody civil war.
I want people to imagine an FBI director that has the stones to investigate the deep state. Imagine a justice system that has the integrity to prosecute corrupt government officials. They have refused to apply the 14th Amendment and give conservatives equal protection under the law. What we've seen here has been the gradual takeover of the government by corporatism, by globalism. They have wrested control of our government away from the citizenry and put it in the hands of a few special interests. And these special interests are as evil as the day is long.
We finally do have a president who has the integrity to do this. We finally do have a DOJ who has the integrity to do this. We know that we have people around the president who not only have the integrity, but have the information and the contacts to get everything done you just said. And you say, well, why aren't they doing it? Everything you're seeing on the news, that's what it's about. That's what this investigation's about. That's what calls of impeachment are about. That's what the globalist attack against Trump is about. That's what the hearings are about. That's what the allegations of Russian spying are about. It's about keeping them off point, keeping them off the agenda, keeping them off task. A lot of what you're watching happening right now, and the misdirection and the complete trying to keep Trump off target goes to that birth certificate. The worst crime in American history was perpetrated against America under the regime of Barack Obama. The media is complicit. Congress is complicit. Federal law enforcement apparently has been complicit. We've got a CIA whistleblower, Dennis Montgomery, whose attorney, Larry Klayman, put it all over the internet the other day that he has said that all of this spying that's been going on American people, that it resulted in manipulation and collusion with judges, Supreme Court justices, congressmen, etc., that James Comey was involved in it, that he was at the top of it. All of this stuff you're seeing about Donald Trump's with the Russians, Donald Trump needs to be impeached, Donald Trump, this is a smokescreen to keep our eyes off of what really happened and what's really going on. And America had better wake up to this, JJ.
Your federal government, your federal law enforcement agencies, our federal intelligence agencies, your federal government in toto has been compromised. The fact that Donald Trump has arrived and said, I'm not going to go along with the status quo anymore, is the cause for alarm for these people on the left. And ultimately, Carl, is it possible that yesterday was simply the first shot fired in an impending civil war between two irreconcilable ideologies?
I don't want our children and grandchildren to see or to participate or to fall victim to such a thing. I don't want our nation to go through such a thing. I don't know that we could survive that. Like Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, when he said, now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any other nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. I mean, God's people, we need to pray. We need to not be afraid to speak truth.
Weekdays from noon to 3 p.m. Eastern Time, The J.J. McCartney Show. Exposing the truth, exposing the lies, exposing the deep state.
The following is a Nightside Radio Studios production.
From the wind-powered Nightside Radio Studios,
tear down this wall.
This is the J.J. McCartney Show.
It's this man. It's the compassion. It's the dignity. It's the wisdom. It's the horse sense of the guy.
Did you know that 65% of the people murdered in the last 10 years were killed by handguns?
Would it make you feel any better, little girl, if they was pushed out of windows?
The American people have seen the truth, and they can see through your lies. There's coming a day when publications such as yours turn into nothing more than flea market advertising. They'll be handing it out for free in grocery store parking lots under everybody's windshield wiper. Yeah, that's the future for the Washington Post and the New York Times and every other liberal publication in this country. We are not going to tolerate your bull anymore. None of it. The American people are fed up. I thought we made that clear on November 8th, but apparently you people in the media just don't get it. A new chapter in American history begins now.
It is my high honor and distinct privilege to introduce to you the President-elect of the United States of America.
Donald Trump is the person to make America great again.
We are a team.
They said it couldn't be done.
Together we will lead our party back to the White House.
He said it must be done.
Beginning on January 20th, we cannot afford to be so politically correct anymore. The most important difference between our plan and that of our opponent is that our plan will put America first.
Here's J.J. McCartney.
Hey, thank you, Marcus, and welcome one and all to the Tuesday edition of the J.J. McCartney Show on this 30th day of January. It is the State of the Union Address preview. We'll talk about what to expect from Donald Trump as he addresses the joint meeting of the Senate and the House. The State of the Union. And oh, so much more coming up on the J.J. McCartney Show next. Well, welcome one and all. Thank you for joining us today. What a great day it's going to be. Heck, it already is. This day, first of all, it's the year 2018. Second of all, tomorrow is the last day of January. It really does blow my mind. The manner with which the time flies. It was a little more than a year ago that Donald Trump gave his first address to the House and the Senate. See, they don't call the first address because you just took office. They don't call that the State of the Union. But now it's been a year since then, and the president is going to basically tell everybody what the State of the Union is. This is a tradition that goes back as far as I can remember, all the way back to the early years of the United States, and it is something that it's a matter of perhaps accountability and the the way this works. The American people have come to expect the president to basically come out there and fill out a report card for the nation. How it's doing economically, how it is doing militarily, morally. I mean, it's a huge deal. The State of the Union. And it goes back a ways. Although the language of the section of the Constitution of the United States says, he, that being the president, shall from time to time give Congress information of the state of the Union and recommend their consideration such measures as he shall judge necessary and expedient. This is Article 2, Section 3 of the Constitution. Although the language of this section of the Constitution is not specific, by tradition the President makes the report annually in late January or early February. Between 1934 and 2013, the date has been as early as January 3rd and as late as February 12th. While not required to deliver a speech, every president since Woodrow Wilson, with the notable exception of Herbert Hoover, has made at least one State of the Union report as a speech delivered before a joint session of Congress. Before that time, most presidents delivered the State of the Union as a written report. Now, since Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the State of the Union is given typically each January before a joint session of the United States Congress and is held in the House of Representatives chamber of the U.S. Capitol. Newly inaugurated presidents generally deliver an address to Congress in February of the first year of their term, but this speech is not officially considered to be a State of the Union. What began as a communication between President and Congress has become a communication between the President and the people of the United States. Since the advent of radio and then television, the speech has been broadcast live on most networks, preempting scheduled programming to reach the largest audience. The speech once given during the day is now typically given in the evening after 9 p.m. Eastern Time. George Washington delivered the first regular annual message before a joint session of Congress on January 8th, 1790, in New York City, then the provisional U.S. Capitol. In 1801, Thomas Jefferson discontinued the practice of delivering the address in person, regarding it as too monarchical, similar to the speech from the throne. Instead, the address was written and then sent to Congress to be read by a clerk until 1913, when Woodrow Wilson reestablished the practice despite some initial controversy. However, there have been exceptions to this rule. Presidents during the latter half of the 20th century have sent written State of the Union addresses. The last president to do this was Jimmy Carter in 1981. For many years, the speech was referred to as the President's annual message to Congress. The actual term State of the Union first emerged in 1934 when Franklin Delano Roosevelt used the phrase, becoming its generally accepted name since 1947. Prior to 1934, the annual message was delivered at the end of the calendar year in December. The ratification of the 20th Amendment on January 23, 1933, changed the opening of Congress from early March to early January, affecting the delivery of the annual message. Since 1934, the message or address has been delivered to Congress in January or February. The 20th Amendment also established January 20th as the beginning of the presidential term. In years when a new president is inaugurated, the outgoing president may deliver a final State of the Union message, but none has done so since Jimmy Carter sent a written message in 1981. In 1953 and 1961, Congress received both a written State of the Union message from the outgoing president and a separate State of the Union speech by the incoming president. Since 1989, in recognition that the responsibility of reporting the State of the Union formally belongs to the president, who held office during the past year, newly inaugurated presidents have not officially called their first speech before Congress a State of the Union message. In 1936, President Roosevelt set a precedent when he delivered the address at night. Only once before, when Woodrow Wilson asked Congress to order the U.S. into World War I, has a sitting president addressed Congress at night. Now, Warren Harding's 1922 speech was the first to be broadcast on radio, albeit to a limited audience, while Calvin Coolidge's 1923 speech was the first to be broadcast across the nation. Harry S. Truman's 1947 address was the first broadcast on television. Lyndon Baines Johnson's address in 1965 was the first delivered in the evening. 3 years later, in 1968, television networks in the United States for the first time imposed no time limit for their coverage of the State of the Union address. Delivered by Lyndon Baines Johnson, this address was followed by extensive televised commentary by, among others, Daniel Patrick Moynihan and Milton Friedman. Ronald Reagan's 1986 State of the Union address is the only one to have been postponed. He had planned to deliver it on January 28, 1986, but it was postponed after the explosion of the Space Shuttle Challenger. And instead, the president addressed the nation on the day's events. Bill Clinton's 1997 address was the first broadcast available live on the World Wide Web. A formal invitation is made by the Speaker of the House to the president several weeks before each State of the Union address. Every member of Congress can bring one guest to the State of the Union address. The president may invite up to 24 guests with the First Lady in her box. Now, the Speaker of the House may invite up to 24 guests in the Speaker's box. Seating for Congress on the main floor is by a first-in, first-served basis with no reservations. Now, the Cabinet, Supreme Court justices, members of the Diplomatic Corps, and Joint Chiefs of Staff have received reserved seating. Now, by approximately 8:30 p.m. on the night of the address, the members of the House have gathered in their seats for the joint session. Then the Deputy Sergeant at Arms addresses the Speaker and loudly announces the Vice President and members of the Senate who enter and take seats assigned for them. The Speaker and then the Vice President specify the members of the House and Senate, respectively, who will escort the President into the House chamber. The Deputy Sergeant at Arms addresses the Speaker again and loudly announces in order the Dean of the Diplomatic Corps, the Chief Justice of the United States, and the Associate Justices, and the Cabinet, each of whom enters and takes their seats when called. The justices take the seats nearest to the Speaker's rostrum and adjacent to the sections reserved for the Cabinet and the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Are you writing all this down? Because there will be a quiz a little later on. Now, just after 9 p.m., as the President reaches the door to the chamber, the House Sergeant at Arms stands just inside the doors, faces the Speaker, and waits until the President is ready to enter the chamber. And then when the President is ready, the Sergeant at Arms always announces his entrance, loudly stating the phrase, "Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States," as applause and cheering begins. The President slowly walks to the Speaker's rostrum, followed by the members of his Congressional Escort Committee. The President's approach is slowed by pausing to shake hands, hug, and kiss and autograph copies of his speech for members of Congress. After he takes his place at the House clerk's desk, he hands 2 manila envelopes previously placed on the desk and containing copies of the speech to the Speaker and the Vice President. After continuing applause from the attendees has diminished, the Speaker introduces the President in the representatives and senators, stating, "Members of Congress, I have the high privilege and distinct honor of presenting to you the President of the United States." Now, this leads to further applause and eventually the beginning of the address by the President. At the close of the ceremony, attendees leave on their own accord. The Sergeant-at-Arms guides the President out of the chamber. Some politicians stay to shake hands, congratulate the President on his way out, etc. Now, customarily, one cabinet member, the designated survivor, does not attend in order to provide continuity in the line of succession in the event that a catastrophic event were to disable the President, the Vice President, and other succeeding officers gathered in the House chamber. Because, as you all know, the chain of succession goes like this. There's the President, obviously, and then if he were to be incapacitated, the Vice President, if he were incapacitated, then it would go to the Speaker of House. That would be Paul Ryan. And if Paul Ryan were incapacitated, then does anybody know the entire chain of succession? See, this is the kind of thing, these are the civics lessons that are no longer being taught to our children because they're being taught about gender identity and gender dysphoria and all kinds of very important stuff that they absolutely should be learning from perfect strangers. It is obviously very important that you preserve a chain of succession. I'm looking at, it's funny, the way that things go. For example, we told you yesterday about Google Home, and if you ask Google Home, who is Jesus Christ, it doesn't know what to do with that. Won't give you an answer. But if you ask it who Buddha was, it's got plenty of information on Buddha. I'm sure the same would be true for any number of other religions. But anyway, I'm digressing. Let me get back to the chain of succession, because this is the presidential line of succession is it's something that a lot of people never think about. But in the event of a president being incapacitated, here's how it goes. In the order in which persons may become or act as president of the United States, if the incumbent president becomes incapacitated, dies, resigns, or is removed from office by impeachment by the House of Representatives and subsequent conviction by the Senate. The line of succession is set by the United States Constitution and the Presidential Succession Act of 1947, as subsequently amended to include newly created cabinet offices. The succession follows the order of Vice President, Speaker of the House of Representatives, President pro tempore of the Senate, and then the heads of federal executive departments who form the Cabinet of the United States. The Cabinet currently has 15 members, beginning with the Secretary of State, followed by the rest in the order of their positions' creation. Now, those heads of departments who are ineligible to act as president are also ineligible to succeed the president by succession. For example, most commonly, if they are not a natural-born U.S. citizen. Several constitutional law experts have raised questions as to the constitutionality of the provisions that the Speaker of the House and the President pro tempore of the Senate succeed to the presidency. And in 2003, the Continuity of Government Commission raised a number of other issues with the current line of succession. The current order, the presidential order of succession, is as follows. Number 1, Vice President Mike Pence. Number 2, Speaker of the House Paul Ryan. Number 3, President pro tempore of the Senate. Now, that at present, the President pro tempore of the Senate is Orrin Hatch. Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson. Secretary of the Treasury, Stephen Mnuchin. Secretary of Defense, Jim Mattis, who is deemed ineligible because he's not he's not deemed ineligible. He is deemed independent. Next in the line of succession would be Attorney General Jeff Sessions, Secretary of the Interior Ryan Zinke, Secretary of Agriculture Sonny Perdue, Secretary of Commerce Wilbur Ross, Secretary of Labor is Alex Acosta, and then you've got Secretary of Health and Human Services Alex Azar, Secretary of Housing and Urban Development Ben Carson. Now, Elaine Chao, the Secretary of Transportation, is ineligible. And so it then goes to Secretary of Energy Rick Perry, Secretary of Education Betsy DeVos, Secretary of Veterans Affairs David Shulkin, and Secretary of Homeland Security Kirstjen Nielsen. Now, obviously, not all of these people are going to be in the chambers for the State of the Union. But there is always a designated survivor in the event that all of these people are in the same room at the same time. And, it's a contingency. It makes sense. And, it's hard to really explain to people, and it's hard to wrap your brain around the possibility of the chain of succession actually having to kick into use. It hasn't had to kick into use since 1963 when JFK was assassinated. However, it did actually, the possibility of it was raised again when Richard Nixon resigned the White House and Gerald Ford became the president. And, Gerald Ford was the first president of the United States that was not elected either president or vice president. Kind of an interesting deal there. A little trivia. But anyway, I digress. I apologize. But, the whole thing is, think about it, an event, a cataclysmic event that would necessitate consulting this chain of presidential line of succession. It is, well, it's portrayed somewhat in TV shows like Jericho, where the United States is attacked by several high-yield nuclear devices going off in some of America's bigger cities. And the way it works in real life, we just don't know. But any nation that has to contend with that kind of cataclysmic event would obviously have more important things to worry about in the near term. And, Yeah, I just don't want to think about it. 855-853-5227. That's our toll-free telephone line here on the Tuesday edition, the State of the Union preview edition of the J.J. McCartney Show. We've got much more to come on this Tuesday. And again, you are welcome to join us. 855-853-5227. That's our telephone number here today. It's toll-free for you. And we will be right back on the J.J. McCartney Show. Don't go away.
The J.J. McCartney Show.
Hey, everybody. J.J. McCartney back here for our good friends at MountainViewOffGridLiving.com. You know, folks, there's one thing that there never seems to be a shortage of in this world, and that is uncertainty, unrest. You know, you never know what's going to happen tomorrow. Natural disasters, economic downturns, whatever it is, you can be prepared by going to MountainViewOffGridLiving.com. They have got everything you need, from ProPure gravity-fed water filtration systems to Kimberly stoves to these composting toilets. Ladies and gentlemen, at MountainViewOffGridLiving.com, you can prepare for anything. Food storage, no problem. Advice, no problem. Call our good friend Sue at MountainViewOffGridLiving.com. Find out what's there for you. Great prices, great advice, and guess what, folks? You'll find it all at MountainViewOffGridLiving.com.
Apple iPhones are great, but they have an annoying feature. They do what you tell them to.
You turn the ringer off, for example, you were at a movie or you were at church. Worst of all, your best friend makes it to Who Wants to Be a Millionaire and you are his phone-a-friend. Because you weren't answering your stupid phone, instead of winning $200,000, he walks away with a check for $1,000, and instead of a limo ride to the airport, he winds up in a smelly cab. So what solution have we come up with for you? It's the all-new iPhone Enforcer. Yes, when you've missed more than 10 calls in a row, or 30 text messages, or a call from a game show contestant desperate for knowledge, your iEnforcer will knock on your door or interrupt your board meeting to remind you, gently at first, to turn your ringer back on and get back to your family and friends who are so desperately trying to get a hold of you. If you don't immediately turn the ringer on and make contact with your frustrated friends, your iEnforcer gets a little more persuasive. It could be a slap in the face, perhaps quick fist to your shoulder, or a softly tossed football to the head. If you continue to resist, your iEnforcer will keep on turning up the intensity. The new iEnforcer makes a fantastic gift. The new iEnforcer, available now at your nearby pawn shop.
Go ahead, Swift 1-2.
Sergeant Dale Beatty was wounded by a roadside bomb.
Colonist, Swift 1-2, en route with urgent ASVAC to Mercy. ETA approximately 35 minutes. How copy?
Now begins the most important journey of his life.
Roger, Swift 1-2.
From the battlefield to home. Home to some very good medicine. His family's love. They'll be staying together at one of the many Fisher houses to help Dale get better and return to his life. Fisher House Foundation provides comfortable housing and other services to the families of wounded warriors and veterans while they receive care at military and VA hospitals. Fisher House is among the highest-rated charities, with 95% of donations going to help our military families in their time of greatest need. Remember those who serve and sacrifice. Consider a tax-deductible gift to Fisher House. Fisher House, because a family's love is good medicine. Go to fisherhouse.org for more information.
He's not angry. He's just really intense. More J.J. McCartney Show coming up next.
It can begin with an email, a phone call, a flyer in the mail, or perhaps a misleading website. Loan modification scams. They come in all shapes and sizes and under different names. Loan rescue firms, counseling services, mortgage consultants. Sometimes posing as a legitimate mortgage company willing to help you modify your loan and get caught up with your payments. But beware, these are highly trained con artists looking to steal your home. They often know who you are, where you live, and because it's public record, know if you are on the brink of foreclosure. You're not alone, however. The National Crime Prevention Council and U.S. Department of Justice have partnered to help homeowners identify and steer clear of these scam artists.
McGruff the Crime Dog here. Protect your home and safeguard your finances. It only takes a little time to become informed. Start by finding a free legitimate housing counselor today.
Take the first step. Visit www.ncpc.org/mortgagefraud. That's ncpc.org/mortgagefraud. This message is from the National Crime Prevention Council and U.S. Department of Justice.
All right, welcome back to the J.J. McCartney Show. The 30th day of January, 2018. And tonight, a little bit after 9 p.m. Eastern Time, the President will deliver the State of the Union address. Now, we've covered the history of the State of the Union. We've also covered the line, the presidential line of succession. We've covered that. Well, now, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to switch gears. There was a development in the news over the weekend and into Monday in which the House Intelligence Committee last night voted to release a classified memo circulating in Congress that purportedly reveals government surveillance abuses by the Obama administration. Now, the vote was announced to reporters by California Representative Adam Schiff, the top Democrat on the committee, who called it a very sad day. He said it was a very sad day, I think, in the history of the committee. The motion passed on a party line vote. President Trump now has 5 days to decide whether he has any objection before the memo can be publicly released. So, what exactly is this thing? Well, we'll tell you. Last week, a top Justice Department official urged House Intelligence Chairman Devin Nunes not to release the memo, saying it would be extraordinarily reckless and could harm national security and ongoing investigations. Well, the 4-page memo has been described by the GOP as shocking, troubling, and alarming, with one congressman likening the details to KGB activity in Russia. And for good reason. Those who have seen the document suggest it reveals what role the unverified anti-Trump dossier played in the application for a surveillance warrant on at least one Trump associate. Schiff said the GOP majority committee also voted against releasing a counter memo written by the Democrats. Well, see, let me explain something to you, Mr. Schiff. You are not the party in power. All right? This ridiculous idea that anytime the Republicans do something, well, they're the majority, that they have to give the Democrats equal time. Well, that's just not true. It's politically naive, and it really proves what a moron you are, Mr. Schiff. Today, the committee voted to put the president's personal interests, perhaps their own political interests, above the national interests, said Schiff, or we'll refer to him from now on as Schiff for Brains. Okay? Another Democrat member, Mike Quigley of Illinois, described the GOP memo as, quote, a book report by a high school kid at 1 a.m. on 2 Red Bulls who hadn't read the book. It's a contravention of the facts, he added. What? The Democrats accusing the Republicans of contravention of facts. Isn't that just rich? Really? House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi said in a statement that the committee's Republicans had crossed from dangerous irresponsibility and disregard for our national security into the realm of cover-up and disregarded the warnings of the Justice Department. Now, here's the thing, dear Nancy. This is not a cover-up. This is revealing a cover-up. A cover-up that was executed by you, Nancy, and your party. So the fact that the defendant is saying, that's not fair, doesn't matter. The American people deserve the truth instead of this never-ending string of deceptions, half-truths, obfuscations. And very simply, when this moron says that it reminds him of a book report by a high school kid, let me tell you what the Democrats remind me of, mister. They remind me of a bunch of 7th grade student council members that feel like they've just changed the world because they passed a resolution that said don't hit. Now, Chairman Nunes' memo contains significant inaccuracies, said Pelosi, and omissions that misrepresent the underlying intelligence and jeopardize the effectiveness of our intelligence and law enforcement communities. Since when do you care about the effectiveness of our intelligence and law enforcement communities, Nancy? The vote came the same day that it was reported that FBI official Andrew McCabe has left his post as deputy director. The White House seems to favor the memo's release, but wouldn't explicitly say whether the president will back the effort. We want full transparency, White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders said. That's what we have wanted, and that's what we have said all along. Sanders said they were letting the process play out before officially weighing in. On Sunday, FBI Director Christopher Wray went to the Capitol to view the 4-page memo. According to one source, Wray was asked to point out inaccuracies or other issues with the wording, and he said he would need his people to take a look at it. The source said this review is ongoing. Now, South Carolina GOP Representative Trey Gowdy, who helped write the 4-page memo, said Sunday he wants it made public. He also suggested that the memo indeed addresses whether the FBI relied at least in part on the dossier, paid for by Democrats and Hillary Clinton's campaign during the 2016 presidential election. In other words, you have the FBI doing the bidding of Hillary Clinton. Now, it was also suggested by Gowdy that the memo indeed addresses whether the FBI relied at least in part on the dossier, partially by Democrats and the Clinton campaign it was paid for during the 2016 presidential election to apply to a secret federal court to get a surveillance warrant purportedly on then-Trump advisor Carter Page. If you want to know whether or not the dossier was used in court proceedings, whether or not it was vetted before it was used, if you are interested in who paid for the dossier, then yes, you'll want the memo to be released. The dossier was compiled by former British intelligence officer Christopher Steele and contained opposition research on Trump during the 2016 presidential campaign. Steele was hired by the U.S. firm Fusion GPS, which commissioned the research with funding from the Democratic National Committee and the campaign of Hillary Clinton. At the same time, the firm was allegedly doing work to help the Russian government fight sanctions. Do I hear collusion, ladies and gentlemen? Real collusion? The real collusion was happening between Hillary Clinton and the Russians. Now, requests for surveillance warrants are made through the U.S. Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, also known as the FISA Court, and target suspected foreign spies inside the United States. Responding to reports that the U.S. extended surveillance on him last spring, Carter Page told Fox News that U.S.-Russia relations have been dominated by misunderstandings throughout much of the past 70 years, since the original McCarthy era. I harbor no ill will towards anyone for past xenophobic biases and only hope that justice is eventually served. So, when it comes to this memo, of course, you're going to hear the pissing and the moaning of Democrats saying, oh, this is bad for the country. It's bad for national security. No. It's not bad for the country. It's not bad for national security. It's devastating to the Democrats. And the reason it is because it reveals exactly what they were doing. And has nothing to do with Donald Trump colluding with or in any other way cavorting with Russia. Period. Now, folks, there's another story I want to share with you, and we'll do it after we take another quick time out on the Tuesday edition of the J.J. McCartney Show, jjmccartney.com and redstatetalkradio.com. We'll be back.
If you agree with JJ's conservative pillars for rescuing America's economy, stay tuned for more. If you are a liberal and think everything is okay, you can go pet your unicorn now.
This is the story of Daniel, who was born 2 months early. His lungs weren't ready. His heart wasn't ready. His parents could only hope that one day he would leave the hospital healthy, and they would all live happily ever after. Daniel's is just one of the more than 500,000 stories of babies born prematurely last year. You can help the March of Dimes stop premature birth and bring more babies home healthy. Learn how at marchofdimes.com. Working together for stronger, healthier babies.
You're listening to the J.J. McCartney Show. If you would like to learn more about being a guest on the show or just have a suggestion or comment, send your comments to the show at jjmccartney.com. The J.J. McCartney Show is broadcast by the Nightside Radio Studios in cooperation with PatriotFB.com.
Hey, parents of children with asthma, here's the Breathe Easies with another one of your favorite hits.
Don't smoke in the house. Don't smoke in the house. Don't smoke around the kids in the house. Don't smoke in the car. Don't smoke in the house. Don't break my heart with your secondhand smoke in the kids and get triggered the asthma.
Preventing asthma attacks can be as simple as making your home and car smoke-free zones. For more Breathe Easy tips to help stop asthma attacks, go to noattacks.org. Up next, well, what do you know? The Breathe Easies with another hit song, Vacuum Up the Floor.
Vacuum up the floor. Vacuum up the floor. Yeah! Vacuum up the floor. The asthma trigger is no more. You gotta vacuum up the furniture and vacuum in the cracks because the dander and the dust can give kids asthma attacks.
Simple steps can help your kids breathe easier. Vacuum up the floor to keep your house free of dust, dander, and dust mites. For more Breathe Easy tips to help stop asthma attacks, go to noattacks.org. Brought to you by the EPA and the Ad Council.
All right, welcome back, everybody. It's the J.J. McCartney Show, Tuesday, the 30th day of January. The State of the Union address coming up tonight from President Trump. One of the things that the president has been, he's been pushing for since he campaigned for the presidency, and that is the border wall. Well, people have tried to mock President Trump because he supports the building of this wall. And people have been trying to say, well, you can't make Mexico pay for it. There's no way Mexico is going to pay for it. Ladies and gentlemen, this president is not stupid. As a matter of fact, he's one of the most intelligent presidents we've ever had. Yes, I'll say it again. Donald Trump is one of the most intelligent presidents that the United States has ever had. And his border wall, well, listen to this. The border wall prototypes are virtually impassable, passing rigorous testing. And while Trump critics and editorial writers who spent decades living in New York and Washington, refer to the president's wall as silly, stupid, and useless. Now, those who actually work on the border say fences are effective. The evidence shows that barriers work, says Pete Hermanson, a 22-year veteran of the Border Patrol, former director of the agency's tactical and rescue teams. In urban areas, a wall makes sense. In more remote areas, sensors and mobile cameras may be the right choice, but you can't say fences don't work. Now, before San Diego built a 46-mile or 45-mile wall, a fence, in the late 1980s, border agents were overwhelmed by illegal traffic from Mexico. In 1986, the agency arrested 629,656 illegal immigrants, almost the population of Las Vegas. Today, the 60-mile sector is almost entirely fenced. Apprehensions last year fell to 26,000, a 95% drop, as double fencing in the most populated areas replaced barbed wire and 6-foot-high steel mats. Now, fencing in San Diego pushed migrants east to Yuma, Arizona, where agents made 138,438 arrests in 2006. After erecting 126 miles of fence, illegal traffic fell 80% to 12,847 in 2017. We proved walls work, said a senior Yuma agent not authorized to speak on the record. But that doesn't mean we need a 30-foot wall from sea to shining sea. The wall system the president is talking about includes a physical wall, but also a fiber optic sensor cable, radar, roads, and lights. Now, that technology is one component of the president's border security initiative. What he calls a wall system includes a barrier, updated cameras, sensors, roads, and lighting. A wall system gives us situational awareness throughout the border and certainty of apprehension of individuals who are crossing the border. Using this technology, I mean, it should have been used all along, but then again, we had Barack Obama in the White House for 8 years and George Bush before that. Well, the wall will be based on the on-site prototypes recently constructed outside San Diego. Now, the models recently underwent what can only be called rigorous testing by special operations teams from El Paso and from Florida. According to those familiar with the tests, the walls withstood cutting torches, jackhammers, and concrete saws better than anything currently on the border, and were almost impossible to climb, thanks to anti-climbing and anti-perching features. I can't talk about it, says a DHS officer in Washington, but the walls were so high we had to suspend testing. It was unsafe. Out of dozens and dozens of attempts, one guy made it to the top, but he couldn't get down. We had to bring him down with a cherry picker. The test results are secret and won't be revealed for another 2 to 3 months, say sources. But after multiple interviews with Border Patrol sources, here are a few takeaways. Among the 8 designs, agents still prefer the see-through bollard-style fence, topped with a flat concrete or steel anti-scaling mat. Agents say a 30-foot-high fence may not be necessary. 24 feet might be acceptable to save a few dollars. Several designs had large concrete bases. One agent from New Mexico said, "I don't think concrete is going to work as a primary fence," he said. Check Google and look at exploding grout, and you'll see why. A primary fence is exposed to Mexican smugglers. A secondary fence is separated from Mexico by a road and a primary fence. Double fencing is considered the gold standard in border security because it gives border agents time to apprehend illegal immigrants. The New Mexico agent is afraid the smugglers, given enough time, can destroy the concrete base, and agents will be unable to see it happen because the wall is opaque. Now, each sector, Fox News has learned, will be free to modify the design based on need, also based on topography and terrain. Now, the fence in San Diego will look different than the one in Yuma or Tucson or the Rio Grande Valley. Donald Trump is not stupid, ladies and gentlemen. He did his homework. Agents say that given the chance, or the choice rather, the new fences will replace an old Vietnam-era fence that is old and only 8 feet tall. Or they'll add a secondary fence or wall, especially in areas adjacent to large cities like Juarez and Tijuana, Mexico, where illegal traffic is most intense. We do have outdated fences in some areas that does need to be upgraded, said Tucson Sector Chief Rudy Carlish. But we also need some added tactical infrastructure like access roads, additional lighting and technology. All those things are needed. Technology is not consistent among border sectors. Some, like Tucson, have the latest cameras that automatically scan the horizon and stop the moment they see something. Other sectors, like San Diego, do not. In places, that have paved roads, for example, make for quick apprehension. Most other areas do not. Ladies and gentlemen, a border wall, and people need to understand this, when Donald Trump was talking about building a wall, he wasn't just talking about a physical barrier. He was talking about a system, a composite, if you will, that utilizes these technologies. And every single part of this system is a deterrent to illegal immigrants crossing the border. How is it the Democrats don't get this? How is that? How is it they don't understand the practical value of putting up barriers to keep illegals from coming into the country? Why is it they are so against the idea of keeping those illegals on the Mexico side of the border? Why are they so averse to that? Ask yourself. Ladies and gentlemen, it's all about politics, and it's all about stealing elections. That is the bottom line. You Democrats out there that are against the wall can suck it, all right? We got hour number 2 of the JJ McCartney Show coming up next. JJMcCartney.com, RedStateTalkRadio.com, and live streaming video on YouTube. We'll be back.
California, at least 13 people were arrested as hundreds blocked traffic on 2 major highways, waving Mexican flags and burning a giant effigy of Donald Trump. Police fired rubber bullets, and pepper spray at hundreds of protesters after the crowds took over major intersections.
Load up, load up, load up, rubber bullets.
Homophobia, sexual assault, white supremacy.
In terms of reaching out and being inclusive, he's done that too. And a will to risk to make things better and opportunities to embrace the underserved communities.
White privilege.
Load up, rubber bullets.
Snowflake, snowflake, little snowflake.
Here in New York, as many as 10,000 people surged through the streets and surrounded the barricaded-off Trump Tower where Donald Trump lives.
Snowflake, snowflake, little snowflake.
We reject the president-elect! Load up, load up, load up, rubber bullets.
Snowflake, snowflake, little snowflake.
I think it speaks to the disenfranchisement of the people that someone like him could be seen as offering anything to the masses.
Load up, load up, load up, rubber bullets.
Little snowflake falling from the sky.
What about gay people? Trump has vowed to protect the LGBT community from a fanatical ideology that represents its biggest threat: radical Islam.
As your president, I will do everything in my power to protect our LGBTQ citizens from the violence and oppression of a hateful foreign ideology.
Load up, load up, load up, rubber bullets.
Snowflake, snowflake, little snowflake, falling, 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 falling.
He is a racist.
Under Obama, more black people are living below the poverty line. The number of African Americans on food stamps has increased 58% under Obama.
On every leading economic issue, on the major economic issues, black Americans have lost ground in every one of those leading categories. So for the last 10 years, it's not been good for black folks.
Is this how the left helps black communities? By making them poorer and more dependent on government. Race relations are at their worst in decades. 8 years of Obama has been devastating for the black community.
He is a sexist. He is a neo-Nazi.
Well, we don't understand why you called in the National Guard.
Falling on my nose.
Not my president. He is a lying ass.
Snowflake, snowflake, little snowflake.
Fake ass.
Little snowflake falling from the sky.
Dumb ass son of a bitch.
Load up, load up, load up, rubber bullets.
Snowflake, snowflake, little snowflake falling, 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 falling.
That's not my president! That's not my president! Load up, load up, load up, rubber bullets.
Falling in my hand.
Thank you for taking America back 60 years of progress.
Falling on my head.
You just voted in a Nazi fascist.
Falling on my nose. Falling in my hand. Snowflake, snowflake, little
What you gonna do about it? What you gonna do?
Live from the Nightside Radio Studios,
This is the JJ McCartney Show.
Are you better off than you were 4 years ago?
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
coming to you from Nebraska by way of Alaska. Here's JJ McCartney.
All right, thank you, Marcus, and welcome back once again, ladies and gentlemen. Good to have you with us. Well, folks, we already talked about the State of the Union address tonight, what to expect from President Trump. So now I want to shift gears to something very serious. And we alluded to this on yesterday's program, but we're going to do some more alluding today because, ladies and gentlemen, when you actually hear the words, when you actually hear the story, the case made showing that the Democrats and the left have been launching an all-out sexual assault on the children of America. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the definition of sexual harassment, the definition of sexual assault. We've all heard and seen way too many times the hashtag #MeToo campaign. But we're going to talk about the particulars here. This is from David Kapelian at WorldNet Daily. The left's ongoing sexual assault on America. We begin with this. It's essential to life. Almost everyone's obsessed with it, yet it is the source of endless problems. Wildly conflicting views about it lie at the core of many of today's most contentious issues. Even ultimate matters concerning God, sin, heaven and hell are somehow closely tied to it, and how we deal with it in this life. Sex. It's the sacred entry point for human life into our world. Yet, it frequently appears in the form of grotesque criminality. As such, sexual abuse has become the focal point for one of America's most sensational mega stories over the past year. The story, actually a never-ending torrent of reports implicating almost 100 different men since accusations against Hollywood producer Harvey Weinstein surfaced in October, chronicle an epidemic of prominent men allegedly using their power and authority to seduce, manipulate, bribe, bamboozle, intimidate, coerce, and physically force women into sex. Beyond Weinstein, accused of sexual abuse by 84 different women, the alleged offenders range from entertainment icons like actors Dustin Hoffman, 8 accusers, and Kevin Spacey, 15 accusers, comedian Louis C.K., 5 accusers, and director-screenwriter James Toback, 38 accusers, to news media big shots like CBS News PBS host Charlie Rose, 8 accusers, NBC's Today anchor Matt Lauer, 7 accusers, MSNBC's Mark Halperin, 12 accusers, and New York Times White House reporter Glenn Thrush, 4 accusers. To U.S. Appeals Court Judge Alex Kaczynski, 6 accusers. To Metropolitan Opera conductor James Levine, 4 accusers. To New Orleans-based TV chef John Besh, 25 accusers. to, of course, politicians, including Representative John Conyers, 6 accusers, Senator Al Franken, 8 accusers, and many others. Indeed, it was recently revealed that millions of taxpayer dollars have been quietly doled out to settle harassment claims against members of Congress in recent years. Notably, the vast majority of those implicated over the last few months are on the political left, though at least one, former Alabama Supreme Court Chief Justice Roy Moore, 8 accusers, a conservative Christian, narrowly lost December's Senate election because of decades-old sexual allegations against him, one involving a 14-year-old girl. And, of course, multiple women have accused President Donald Trump of having committed various sexual improprieties over the years. It's not coincidental that those on the left comprise most of the offenders. Now, during the 1990s, Oregon Senator Bob Packwood was notorious for forcing himself on dozens of women staffers. He wrote in his diary that there were 22 staff members I'd made love to, and probably 75 others I've had a passionate relationship with. And ultimately, Packwood was forced by his Senate peers to resign in disgrace. But how, since the allegations against him were common knowledge for years? How did he get away with it for so long? It was because, though a nominal Republican, Packwood was a progressive liberal, at least with regard to women's issues, and as such was a singularly prominent and fierce champion of abortion and Planned Parenthood. The apparent psychology underlying this arrangement, likewise evident in many current celebrity sex abuse cases, was this: support, protect, and defend cherished left-wing feminist causes like abortion, and in return, many grateful women will reward you, or at least accommodate or tolerate your atrocious, predatory behavior. Of course, most everyone agrees that using one's power and position to extort sexual favors is shameful and wrong. But beyond that point of agreement, the story gets complicated, and not just because of today's intensely politicized environment, wherein one's attitude toward a particular sexual abuser often hinges on whether you agree with his politics, but also because a wide range of alleged misbehaviors are being lumped together under wildly broad terms like sexual harassment. For example, Juanita Broderick credibly accused Bill Clinton of forcible rape, a heinous crime once punishable in the U.S. by death. At the other end of the spectrum, 2006 Miss USA contestant Samantha Holvey told CNN that pageant then-owner Donald Trump personally inspected each woman beforehand and would step in front of each girl and look you over from head to toe, like we were just meat. We were just sexual objects, that we were not people. Unseemly? Perhaps. But there's a world of difference between he raped me and he looked at me like a piece of meat. To understand what's really happening and why we must realize this seemingly sudden epidemic of powerful men sexually abusing women and girls, and sometimes boys, is just the tiny, tiny tip of a very large iceberg. In many areas and arenas of American life, not just Hollywood, the news media, and the halls of Congress, sex has gone completely rogue. For just one example, Silicon Valley is now notorious for outrageous drug-fueled sex parties, formerly called orgies, featuring the same casting couch dynamic of young women participating in hopes of advancing their careers. Male guests at these sex parties include powerful investors, well-known entrepreneurs, and top executives, writes Bloomberg TV anchor Emily Chang in her new book, Brotopia, Breaking Up the Boys Club of Silicon Valley. Now, here's the thing, folks. What could these sex-crazed tech pioneers possibly be thinking? Explains Chang, their behavior at these high-end parties is an extension of the progressiveness and open-mindedness, the audacity, if you will, that make founders think they can change the world. Now hold that thought, that sexual anarchy is the natural outgrowth of progress and enlightenment. As we widen the angle of our lens to reveal that we are currently swimming, drowning actually, in an ocean of wild sexuality, and all by design. Since the 1960s, America has been engulfed in an unfolding sexual revolution as radical and life-changing as the most dramatic coup d'etat. 1 million abortions per year. That's one dead child every 28 seconds. Millions of out-of-wedlock births. 40% of all U.S. births. A ubiquitous hookup culture of casual sex. 110 million Americans with a sexually transmitted disease. And, of course, hardcore pornography pervading every nook and cranny of society. All testify to the wholesale abandonment of the Judeo-Christian morality of previous generations. Not to mention the glorification of homosexuality, indeed, its elevation to the status of specially protected class. The redefinition of marriage and the creation of dozens of bizarre new genders that never before existed in all of human history. The predictable result of all of this wild sexual freedom, confusion, immorality, insecurity, pain, guilt, addiction, mental illness, infidelity, divorce, family breakdown, depression, self-destructive behavior, and suicide. And how did this hellish situation come about? It is entirely the work of the political and cultural left. Leftists have been dreaming, scheming, preaching, protesting, demanding, litigating, and legislating total sexual freedom, complete sexual anarchy, no rules whatsoever, for decades. And now that their wish has finally come true and the old rules have been done away with, they're still complaining about people crossing ethical and moral lines with regard to sex. Let that sink in. Now, these are the same people who didn't ever want to be told any sexual behavior was wrong, immoral, predatory, disordered, aberrant, sinful, or criminal. Remember the popular LGBT saying used to deflect all criticism? Love is love. What a crock. What a crock. So, for example, while many justifiably recoil in horror at reports of sexual predators seducing underage actors in Hollywood, chillingly detailed in the acclaimed documentary film An Open Secret. Well, the truth is, pretty much the entire gay subculture could not exist without the same kind of predation on minors. That's right. Older males initiating and essentially converting younger males into homosexuality has long been a fixture in the gay culture. But wait, some will still argue that sexual freedom is okay as long as it's consensual. In post-Christian America, consensuality has replaced morality as the standard of what is acceptable and unacceptable behavior. Rather than adhere to a Judeo-Christian standard of right and wrong, the new standard is simply the mutual consent of the people participating. But this is nonsense, since actually following such a standard would require there be no laws. For example, against even the most dangerous and addictive drugs, since both user and pusher act consensually. More to the point, embracing consensuality as our standard without morality is like driving drunk and accidentally running someone down. You didn't mean to kill anybody, but you did. And since you were living in a reckless, irresponsible, willfully blind manner, tragedy was inevitable, and you are guilty of that person's death, whether you intended to or not. When you're morally reckless and irresponsible, you simply cannot know when you're hurting someone because you've intentionally made yourself blind to life's most basic spiritual law of right and wrong in dealing with other people. Now, graphic, I got to tell you, folks, and this is, you either understand this or you don't. But if you don't see that there is a moral element to this, and then that people that engage in this behavior are morally reprehensible, if you don't see that, then I don't know that there are any words left in the language that can open your eyes, but we'll try. As a result of this idea that, consensuality is key, pedophiles do not regard pursuing sexual relations with prepubescent children as wrong. Remember, love is love. In fact, pedophiles see their cause as the next great civil rights movement. Besides, it's all consensual. Now, what about adultery? Now a huge business with various cheating websites, or affair dating as they call it, encouraging, facilitating, and arranging extramarital affairs. Is adultery consensual? Does the spouse being cheated on consent? What about your children in middle school, high school, and college being pressured in myriad ways to become sexually active. When they give in to this relentless pressure, is it consensual, really? When our hypersexualized culture pressures, intimidates, and scares impressionable girls into believing that they have to put out for their boyfriend or they'll end up miserable, unpopular, and lonely, and she gives in and has sex, was it consensual? Of course not. As a talk show host friend of mine likes to say, the culture is a child molester. In one form or another, obvious or subtle, the dynamic we now rightly condemn in today's sensational epidemic of sexual misconduct is the exact same dynamic rampant throughout the rest of society, which many have gleefully encouraged and defended, while self-righteously attacking all who have questioned their sexual coup d'etat and tried in vain to bring us back to moral sanity, or as I like to call it, uprightness, in one form or another. Now, there is one and only one thing that has acted as a bulwark against wild sexuality and the resultant utter destruction of societies in human history. Sex has always been a war zone. I point out the marketing of evil, sexual purity, living within certain behavioral confines deemed wholesome and moral, even if it means denying or delaying gratification of one's own powerful drives, has always been a major dividing line between those attempting to obey God's laws and those rebelling against them or denying they exist. Now, this chasm between what we call Judeo-Christian sexual morality and basically the rest of the world becoming stunningly clear in Dennis Prager's award-winning essay, Why Judaism Rejected Homosexuality. When Judaism demanded that all sexual activity be channeled into marriage, it changed the world. It is not overstated to say that the Torah's prohibition of non-marital sex made the creation of Western civilization possible. Societies that did not place boundaries around sexuality were stymied in their development. The subsequent dominance of the Western world can largely be attributed to the sexual revolution initiated by Judaism and later carried forward by Christianity. The revolution consisted of forcing the sexual genie into the marital bottle. It ensured that sex no longer dominated society, heightened male-female love and sexuality, and thereby almost alone created the possibility of love and eroticism within marriage, and began the arduous task of elevating the status of women. By contrast, throughout the ancient world, and up to the recent past in many parts of the world, sexuality infused virtually all of society. Human sexuality, especially male sexuality, is utterly wild. Men have had sex with women and with men, with little girls and young boys, with a single partner and in large groups, with total strangers and immediate family members, and with a variety of domesticated animals. There is little, animate or inanimate, that has not excited some men sexually. Among the consequences of the unchanneled sex drive is the sexualization of everything, including religion. Unless the sex drive is appropriately harnessed, not squelched, which leads to its own destructive consequences, higher religion could not have developed. Thus, the first thing Judaism did was to desexualize God. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth by his will, not through any sexual behavior. Now, this broke with all other religions, and it alone changed human history. Prager goes on to catalog the various gods of the ancient world, showing that virtually all of them were depicted as engaging in sexual relations. Thus, given the sexual activity of these little g gods, it is not surprising that the religions themselves were replete with all forms of sexual activity. Prager says, explaining numerous examples of ancient and even more recent religious traditions that included sacred ceremonial sex of various sorts and ritual prostitution within religious sanctuaries, such as sex between Hindu monks and nuns, and even sex with children. Judaism placed controls on sexual activity. It could no longer dominate religion and social life. It was to be sanctified, which in Hebrew means separated from the world, and placed in the home, in the bed of husband and wife. Judaism's restrictions of sexual behavior was one of the essential elements that enabled society to progress. Along with ethical monotheism, the revolution begun by the Torah when it declared war on the sexual practices of the world wrought the most far-reaching changes in history. Well, there you have it. The jewel of human civilization, comprising the biblical laws of life meant to guide us safely and surely through this troubled world, has been foolishly thrown into the trash heap, reviled, spat upon, and worse. The left, which has been obsessed with removing Judeo-Christian morality from our schools, culture, and minds for several generations, now claims to be shocked, yes, shocked, at the inevitable excesses and crimes they themselves have brought about. As the saying goes, be careful what you ask for, because you just might get it. And let us remember also the famous line from Dostoevsky's The Brothers Karamazov. If God does not exist, everything is permitted. To which the left would hasten to add, as long as it's consensual. Folks, this is an assault on our children. It is nothing less. And until you come to a place where you can admit that there is a moral element, a spiritual element to sex, and until you can admit to yourself that the acts of homosexuality and other fornications are ungodly and, yes, are grievous sin, unless you come to a place of understanding that, and understanding that that type of sin demands judgment, until you can resolve that in your own mind, your own heart, your own spirit, that you'll be wandering around this world with no compass whatsoever. Complete and total chaos will ensue. And as you can see, as you look around the culture, most of America today is already to that point and beyond. God help us. We'll be back.
The J.J. McCartney Show.
Hey, everybody. J.J. McCartney back here for our good friends at MountainViewOffGridLiving.com. You know, folks, there's one thing that there never seems to be a shortage of in this world, and that is uncertainty, unrest. You know, you never know what's going to happen tomorrow. Natural disasters, economic downturns, whatever it is, you can be prepared by going to MountainViewOffGridLiving.com. They have got everything you need, from ProPure gravity-fed water filtration systems to Kimberly stoves to these composting toilets. Ladies and gentlemen, at MountainViewOffGridLiving.com, you can prepare for anything. Food storage, no problem. Advice, no problem. Call our good friend Sue at MountainViewOffGridLiving.com. Find out what's there for you. Great prices, great advice, and guess what, folks? You'll find it all at MountainViewOffGridLiving.com.
I never said, nor would I ever say, that we are giving people space to destroy our city. We also gave those who wished to destroy space to do that as well. I never said, nor would I ever say, that we are giving people space to destroy our city. Okay! So my words should not be twisted. We also gave those who wished to destroy space to do that as well. What? I never said, nor would I ever say, that we are giving people space to destroy our city. Okay! We also gave those who wished to destroy space to do that as well. What? I never said, nor would I ever say, that we are giving people space to destroy our city. We also gave those who wished to destroy space to do that as well.
Adopt US Kids presents Multiple Choice Parenting.
Your daughter just had her first breakup. Do you A, put yourself in her shoes?
How could he do this to you? And for Sheila, she has split ends.
B, console her.
Oh, sweetie, this is going to happen a lot. 4, maybe 5 more times before you get married.
C, take charge.
Got to get this all straightened out. Keep a little talking to, man to man, mano a mano. Hey, Steve! Is now a good time? No? Okay, no problem. Bye.
Or D, help her find a new boyfriend.
I know a great place to meet boys. The internet. Nice, single boys. Never mind. How about some ice cream?
As a parent, there are no perfect answers. But you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
For more information on how you can adopt, visit adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
You're listening to the J.J. McCartney Show with me, J.J. McCartney, on jjmccartney.com.
There was a tree in the middle of a yard, the prettiest tree that you ever did see. And the ALB goes around, all around, and the ALB goes around, and on that tree there were some holes, the ugliest holes that you ever did see. And the holes on the tree, and the trees in the ground, and the ALB goes around, all around, and the ALB goes around, and in that hole there was some frass, sawdusty frass that you ever did see. And the frass and the holes on the tree, and the trees in the ground, and the ALB goes around, all around, and the ALB goes around. Now there's no more tree in the middle of that yard. It's the deadest tree that you ever did see. Because the beetle killed the tree, and the tree hit the ground, and the ALB still goes all around, and the ALB goes around.
Spot the signs and stop the Asian longhorned beetle. Learn all the signs at AsianLonghornedBeetle.com.
All right, welcome back, everybody. It's the second hour of the J.J. McCartney Show. I thank you all for being with us. Even the inbred in the chat room at YouTube today. Yeah, really nice to have you with us. Like it or not, you're going to hear the truth. And it will likely keep you awake at night. You'll toss and you'll turn, I imagine. But you know what, folks? Why are we here? We're here to make a difference. We're here to talk about the truth and to expose the lies of the left, the ongoing lies of the left that, I have to laugh at the foolishness of these people. Their own vanity and their own, sense of rebellion against God is, it's a pathetic state of being. It really is. A pathetic state of being. Now, as I understand it, there are some new promises coming in the State of the Union address. We already know what Donald Trump promised when he was campaigning for president. Well, now the State of the Union is coming, and he's going to be talking about some of the things that he wants to accomplish going forward, and it remains to be seen whether or not any of this will come to pass, but let's take a look. Ahead of President Trump's first State of the Union address tonight, analysts are anticipating what he might say about taxes, immigration, the economy, upcoming elections, and other issues. It's a time to evaluate how this president, with no previous political experience and a penchant for bluntness, is doing regarding his promise to make America great again. Even his detractors must concede that the more than 170 accomplishments in the first 375 days or so of his administration line up with his stated campaign objectives. For his supporters, there's a Thank Trump campaign that allows them to pick out a thank you card, add a message, and send it directly to the White House at no cost. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell said this week that 2017 was the best year in decades for conservatives. Trump's inauguration offered some comic relief for talented video editors, but his inaugural address set the bar high for his presidency. Let us reflect on Donald Trump's inaugural address. Donald Trump, on the 20th of January 2017, he made some promises. Let's listen to some of them. Here is the president.
What a great honor to be able to introduce for the first time ever anywhere the 45th President of the United States of America, Donald J. Trump.
Okay, we're going to try something a little different here, since the audio is choppy there. We don't want to muck with that, so we'll find another way to bring this to you. Folks, pardon me. There we go. All right. We have a remarkable privilege in watching everything that's going on in America over the course of the last year. Because everything that's gone on in America over the course of the last year has been taking us somewhere. And, the tendency of most of the punditry out there is to, just be as critical as possible of Donald Trump. And it's baffling and mind-boggling that so many people out there have filled their hearts with nothing but hatred for the president. And at the same time, what are they doing for America? What do they have to offer? I wish more people would give the man credit for his courage, for his gravitas, and just for the fact that he has, in one short year, accomplished more than both of his predecessors in 16 years. There's no denying it. There can be no denying it. That Donald Trump has done more in the face of more resistance than any president we've ever had. And he has been a remarkable leader. And if people don't want to give him credit, well, that just says volumes about them. And so here we go. Well, once again, the slap-happy introduction of the president, which we can live without. My apologies for the delays here.
To introduce for the first time ever anywhere the 45th President of the United States of America, Donald J. Trump.
Okay. Yep, I suspected as much. The deep state messing with the internet.
Chief Justice Roberts, President Carter, President Clinton, President Bush, President Obama, fellow Americans, and people of the world, thank you. We, the citizens of America, are now joined in a great national effort to rebuild our country and restore its promise for all of our people. Together, we will determine the course of America and the world for many, many years to come. We will face challenges. We will confront hardships, but we will get the job done. Every 4 years, we gather on these steps to carry out the orderly and peaceful transfer of power. And we are grateful to President Obama and First Lady Michelle Obama for their gracious aid throughout this transition. They have been magnificent. Thank you. Today's ceremony, however, has very special meaning, because today we are not merely transferring power from one administration to another or from one party to another, but we are transferring power from Washington, D.C. and giving it back to you, the people. For too long, a small group in our nation's capital has reaped the rewards of government while the people have borne the cost. Washington flourished, but the people did not share in its wealth. Politicians prospered, but the jobs left and the factories closed. The establishment protected itself, but not the citizens of our country. Their victories have not been your victories. Their triumphs have not been your triumphs. And while they celebrated in our nation's capital, there was little to celebrate for struggling families all across our land. That all changes starting right here and right now because this moment is your moment. It belongs to you. It belongs to everyone gathered here today and everyone watching all across America. This is your day. This is your celebration. And this, the United States of America, is your country. What truly matters is not which party controls our government, but whether our government is controlled by the people. January 20th, 2017 will be remembered as the day the people became the rulers of this nation again. The forgotten men and women of our country will be forgotten no longer. Everyone is listening to you now. You came by the tens of millions to become part of a historic movement, the likes of which the world has never seen before.
I want you to think about that, folks. A little more than a year ago, Donald Trump stepped up, gave the inaugural address, and he promised the world would see the beginning of what I guess, and I'm trying to remember his words, but a phenomenon the likes of which the world has never seen. A period where growth replaces misery, where hope replaces despair, and where the people, once again, are asserting themselves as the authority over a bloated, out-of-control government. And what Donald Trump said on January 20th of 2017, he meant. And the things he said when he campaigned are the things he's doing as president. Now, obviously, I'm sure he's going to lay out some more initiatives tonight. I'm sure he's going to lay out some more goals for America to pursue. But they won't just be words. The president is going to deliver the State of the Union tonight, and I believe he's going to continue to challenge America to do more, to challenge America to be more, and to challenge every one of us to be more responsible with the things that God has given us, to be more productive, to be smarter with our money. And if we get more people working in America, as has been the case over the course of the last year, the more shoulders we have at the wheel, the lighter the burden will be on all of us. And you know what? America needs a message of hope. America needs a message of promise. It really does. You know, we suffered, and I do mean suffered, under Barack Obama. Barack Obama was a bane to this nation. His policies were designed to destroy and to tear down the things that people like Ronald Reagan and many others along the way had sought to build up. I pray that America has learned a lesson through all of this, and that lesson is simply this: never again. Never again are we going to fall prey to a demagogue like Barack Obama. And you know, the sad part is that most Americans had an opportunity to learn all they needed to know about Barack Obama before the elections. But most of them felt, I'll let somebody else do the hard work of being a patriot. I'm just going to go with the flow. That didn't work out too well for these United States. As a matter of fact, it could have broken us and been our undoing. It could have broken us and been our undoing, but along comes Donald Trump. Never been in politics before. So everybody says, well, he's a novice, he's not going to do anything. He has no chance of being the nominee. And yet, Donald Trump had skills that the mainstream media simply refused to acknowledge or understand or comprehend. Because to them, it seemed unthinkable. To them, they thought they had already put the American sleeping giant into a coma. But that sleeping giant awakened in 2016. And thank God they did. Thank God the American people voted for Donald Trump. Thank God that a year after his inauguration, this president has put together one of the most unprecedented periods of economic growth, a sea change in our foreign policy, and a message to the entire world, and that is that America, the strong, America, the great nation, America, the morally upright nation, is back. If you want to put it in terms that anybody can understand, it's real simple. Donald Trump inaugurated on the 20th of January, 2017. He may not have said the words, but the message was loud and clear. There's a new sheriff in town, and he's not going to take any guff, and he hasn't. And you know what? Donald Trump, the candidate, was pretty good, but Donald Trump, the president, is excellent. There are people out there that simply refuse to see what is happening right before their eyes. It is the revitalization of America. It is the renewal of hope in America. It is truly the process of making America great again. As opposed to what would have happened, the unthinkable, if Hillary Clinton had won the election. Oh my God. Where would America be today? America would be in a very bad place right now. And folks, we have to pray for this president. We have to pray for our leaders. We're instructed to do that in the Bible. And I hope you all take that seriously, because America depends on Americans. Where are we morally? Where are we spiritually right now as a nation? We've been given a reprieve by God Almighty in the form of Donald Trump. But what we do with that reprieve is really what's at stake here. So please, take it seriously. Your responsibility as a citizen, and your responsibility, quite honestly, as a Christian, is to pray for our leaders. So please do so. And when you pray for our leaders, mean it. Because God still hears the prayers of the righteous. And if you're not righteous, well, then let's take care of that while we're at it. Get down on your knees and talk to God and ask Him to continue to give America opportunities to come back to Him. And then let's all do our jobs. Let's all be upright. Let's all walk obediently to God. Let's lead by example. And let's stand together. Because together, America can be great again. But if we fracture ourselves and forget what the responsibilities of citizenship really are, then God help us. All right, my friends, we'll see you at the State of the Union tonight, and we've got IQ Al Rassooli tomorrow. Until then, be good to yourselves, and if you possibly can, be good to someone else. And remember, we'll win in the end because there are more of us than there are of them, because God is with us, and because we are all in this thing together. Have a great rest of your Tuesday. We'll see you on Wednesday. Until then, God bless. Bye-bye.